katoa, whai ki te kitea tēnei ata. Ko taranaki te maunga, tanga hoi te awa, ko Ngāti Runui, me ngā ruhine o ki iwi, ko Taupura Hinui, taku marae, ko Hawere taku kāinga, nō reira tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Judith Nowotarski. In my real life, I'm a kindergarten teacher, first and foremost. I'm a wife and a mother, and currently the National President of NZEI Te Reo. I'm also the youngest of 9 children, and I'm constantly reminded, and I think I got my union skills from being the youngest of 9. I learned about mediating, I learned about negotiating, I learned about turn taking, I learned about the person that makes the most noise doesn't always get what they want, but I was also treasured. I had an older sister who looked after me, or it was her job to look after me, and I had brothers who taught me a lot about, reminded me that I was kind of spoiled. We're out on that debate. I still feel that, you know, the evidence isn't strong enough, but however, that's where I come from. And in my role as National President, it's a privileged role. I am the first early childhood person. I'm also come through the branch of NZEI Te Reo, or the avenue of Middle Māori. So I belong to Aranui Tōmu, which is the branch for Māori membership, and have had a specific focus on Māori education. One of the reasons I joined Secure, actually, was the first union I belonged to, Combined Early Childhood Union of Aotearoa, was because I was looking for other kaiako Māori to talk with. That was all, just wanted to chat. And so the story goes. And I want to acknowledge, before I start, past, present and future, the past of those who have laid the pathway for this discussion, for this forum to occur, and I acknowledge you and I thank you. I want to acknowledge those of us who are here today, and those of us who can't be here but are with us on our journey and on our absolute focus to look at this issue of children in crisis, and to collectively find the outcomes that best serve our tamariki. So some of my information that I'll share with you is borrowed, I guess, from those who have better skills and knowledge about statistics. However, I wanted to use them and to help them as pointers to where I take the discussion from NZEI Te Reo's perspective. So the abstract I provided the conference was about how many more ambulances, how many more rescue missions, how many more tools, how many more initiatives could we create, and do we need to? And so in my presentation I've got 2 questions, as Jane said, around this. Are we doing our best? The statistics say, and the evidence available to society right now says that we aren't, and that we could do a lot better. I want to touch on how this looks like inside the early childhood and primary sectors, and highlight some statistics we should all be concerned about. And then I want to show you an example in talking to the second question of what does the best look like, or what could it look like? And then finally, how do we move on? And where do we create a new environment where all our children can thrive? If we don't address the issue of poverty, then the cost is very high. The stakes are very high for our society. And we know that there are studies in both New Zealand and overseas, in the US, showing that economic deprivation has a significant impact on both schooling and future success in the labour market. That children from families with inadequate income in their early childhood years grow up to complete 2 fewer years of schooling, earn less than half as much money, and are nearly 3 times as likely to report poor health. And some of these effects can be turned around by quality education. However, by the time that many of our children arrive at a centre, a kindergarten or a school, much damage has been done already. And neuroscience tells us that severe and persistent poverty at a young age will lead to permanent and structural changes in the brain, as well as the impact on immune and endocrine systems. And this contributes to persistent poor health. As I said, I had some statistics, and I know that in the next few days there are people who will take you into those deeper and talk about how they're collected. But really, that poverty affects adults clearly as it affects our children. That 1 in 4 of our children currently live in poverty, and it costs around $6 to $8 billion a year to address the issues created, and that's the equivalent of 1 Christchurch earthquake every 7 years. Now, I'm not being disrespectful to Christchurch in using that statistic, but if you put it on a scale such as that, that is what we're looking at. Some more statistics. There's the impact on children where both their parents need to work. They earn low incomes, they're probably working shifts, and they don't always have that wider family support. There's the impact of young sole parents and the outcomes that they experience that leads to a reoccurring cycle. Not all our young parents, I have to say, but generally that's what our statistics will show us. So if we look at poverty and underachievement in children in an education framework, each of those illustrate a number of areas. For instance, the poor housing, and that was touched on this morning. Overcrowding, no space for homework, poor sleep, cold houses. The issue of transience, families needing to move houses and move to find work, and that leads to frequent changes in both early childhood attendance and attending schools. The high family stress that it has on everyone, and it's not, it's just so disconcerting that, with stress in your life before you even leave your door to go out to the wide world, what impact that has on learning. There are language poor early childhood years, and by that I mean that for all these reasons that I've talked about and that are up there, there is the quality of conversation that these children get to enjoy, not because their parents cannot have that conversation, but they're tired, they're exhausted, they're thinking about the next day. Also the access to books and resources that others might take for granted. And we're just talking about things that you can have in your home. Access to out-of-school activities. Well, for many, as was previously said, the ability to even attend an after-school activity, to join a sports group, to participate in some of those community activities is the issue is around getting there, around transport, around maybe the cost. It could be a small cost, but it's still a cost, and that means that children miss out. And that lack of connection to the early childhood centre or to the school, it's brought about by their own self-esteem. They feel proud, and yet they feel shame. Communication skills they think they need to interact with us at school or at an early childhood centre. And the social stigma around being identified as a person or a family that needs help. Not everyone wants to put their hand up for that. They would like the help, but actually when you're identified in that way and not seen as the person you are, as the family you are, that puts up barriers. There have been a number of community responses, and I'm going to just briefly draw attention to some of those. And there's been plenty of evidence that the government and the corporate organisations and the communities locally and nationally are responding to the disturbing poverty statistics. And while most programs will make a difference, the question is, how well coordinated are these programs? And are the interventions offered early enough? And actually, do the majority of vulnerable children and families benefit from them? Are school staff and early childhood centre staff recognised for the time and effort they put in to supporting families in schools? And are we learning from successful multi-pronged approaches that some of these schools are taking on? And are we duplicating the success across the country? Programs like this, Incredible Years, currently running in 20 countries around the world, are being funded by the government and is expected to be rolled out to more than 12,000 parents in 2014. Computers in Homes. This program's been running for 10 years and has connected more than 5,000 families to the internet and provided them with computer skills to enhance their life at school and at work. For $50, families receive free training, recycled computer, and 12 months subsidised internet connection. So that in itself, an effort and a response to help children in homes less well off feel like there is some equity in what they have access to. Kids Can, that's a charity. It pulls funding and sponsorship for over 345 low decile schools across the country, and 81 of those are in Auckland. They provide food for breakfast clubs and lunches. They've provided over 40,000 free pairs of shoes, 80,000 free pairs of socks, and 70,000 raincoats to children in low decile schools. And there's another program, Kickstart Breakfast program, and that's provided more than 570 decile 1 to 4 schools around New Zealand with 48,000 breakfasts every week. It's a joint venture between the government and the corporates Fonterra and Sanitarium. And the government have recently put 1.9 million into this. They're also, the government, funding social workers in schools and health services in low decile schools, and responding to the community's call to use schools as hubs for effective delivery of social services. This Heart Foundation program, it aims to get parents practically involved in preparing and cooking affordable, simple and tasty family meals. So, those are just a few, and I'm sure there are more. Which brings me to fences rather than ambulances. So all those initiatives I just briefly touched on, they're all fundamentally about mitigating but not preventing poverty. So if we have a careful look at this slide, multi-millions of dollars have been spent on predator-proof fences to protect and save thousands of hectares of our native bush, enabling it to grow and thrive in a healthy forest family. I think that's a great analogy. And I'm all for protecting our native bush. But if you think about what we could apply from that learning, it's a great metaphor for what we need to do to protect and nurture all our children, and especially the most vulnerable. Effective fences, especially robust models like this one, you can see around the edge there, are all joined up and provide maximum protection for our bush and birds, allowing them to live as complex ecosystems. The other thing around fences such as these in protecting native bush is that they create corridors. So they connect areas of native bush with other areas. They're called corridors in that they enable the native bird life, or the bird life, to travel from place to place, to distribute the seed, to regenerate and rejuvenate. So perhaps instead of fences, we're talking about corridors that will connect up communities and connect up initiatives. We're talking about creating natural corridors, particularly for our low decile schools and centres. So the most effective fence is one that lifts children and their families out of poverty. And the corridors that we might talk about are perhaps in reference to joining up the economic, the tax and the social education policies. So just think on that for a minute. I represent an organisation that covers early childhood to primary and into tertiary. I represent teachers and support staff and principals. I represent staff from the Ministry of Education. Right now, the current government rhetoric is one that teachers in schools and early childhood centres are underserving children, that our system is performing less and less well compared to other countries. But the reality is that we have a very good education system. There is the thought that quality teaching alone will fix the problems of our underachievement, that 4 years of high quality teachers will nullify social and economic factors. If only that was so. Only that was so. We have an education process around national standards that says one size will fit all, and that this impacts on children's motivation and engagement. It impacts on seeing themselves as learners, and they're talking about extending this kind of quantitative assessment into children in early childhood. All this rhetoric, this deficit rhetoric, undermines the confidence and motivation of both children and those who work in front of them. NZEI Te Reo believes that our lens should be about building for success, building on resilience, not constantly redefining vulnerability, building on a constant improvement of our high quality education system, building high trust and professionalism, not be driven by data or competition or privatisation. Not all our playing fields are created equal, and neither are communities, and neither are schools and centres. So NZEI Te Reo, all right, we can't solve all of society's problems on our own, but we can focus, and we should focus, on what we can change, and ensure that those changes radiate out from our schools and our centres. And to be serious about this, about education, about lifting underachievement in education, we need to be serious about it from start to finish. And of course, where would I start? But the early childhood centres, and the importance of early childhood education, and the barriers to early childhood education, barriers of money, of costs, of work commitments, of low pay employment, of supported family to be around, of community knowledge, of access and of transport. And now actually there's we want to make poorer families feel even worse about their circumstances by attaching a benefit payment to their child's attendance at a preschool centre or an early childhood centre. So I'm just going to share a little story. As I said earlier, or as I was introduced, I've been at Hara Kindergarten for 15 years as their head teacher. And I've worked with many families, and I've learnt so much from them. And I've listened to them. So while I went in teaching with a head about what should happen, I soon realised, and quite rightly, that what will happen will only be that way if I listen and if I work with families and I really take time to understand. I'm all about focusing on relationships, and so is the team I work with. In fact, we put that ahead of some of the other bits we're supposed to do in the centre. But I can say that it's those relationships that have enabled us to support the families that need support, and to lead the families in helping each other. Because our poor families aren't always obvious. They don't come with a sign on their head. And you can't make judgments about appearance or about what they participate in. We have what we call our potluck tea evenings. Bring what you'd have for tea to the centre and join us. And they're pretty well supported, and there's such a variety. But we can't help notice that there are some families who will go above and beyond and bring in the treats and bring in the drinks and help show that their child can do all these things and have all these things. And they really stretch their budgets to do this. When we know that actually, if you look around, it's bringing that favourite, those sandwiches and those cordials and those lovely things that you like to have at home, bringing those and sharing those. But our families who do this, we recognise that they're doing this so that they don't stand out. Because they believe if they behave this way, they won't stand out. We run excursions, not many, and not many because we can actually do a lot in our own area. We have an amazingly huge kindergarten. We can do a lot there. But when we go on an excursion, it's always advertised as everyone can come, bring your siblings, bring the babies, bring everyone you want. And we do say that there's a gold coin donation. But we never check that everyone did that. We do check off a list because that's health and safety, you've got to know who's with you. But we don't go any further than that. And if we have a family that says, would have come but we have got, and you can see them hesitating, we say, is it okay if we take your child then? We'll look after them. We've got enough of us here to do that. Do you feel okay about that? And they do. And it's about not preventing anyone from participating in our philosophy. It's about doing or giving them what they need to have so that they can participate. We also have shared lunch. Shared morning tea. That's interesting. There's a roster, you go on that. Everyone wants a turn. And we thought it was a great idea. And fundamentally it is, except that we'd have many parents really worrying, what shall we bring? Mary wants us to bring cheesels and chocolate and, is that what we need to bring? And I said, what do you have if you're having a snack at home? What do you have? And they would say, we just have a sandwich or some apples. I said, bring those, because it's about what we have for a snack and it's about sharing. And I said, I can tell you that the favourite thing on any of the morning tea menu has been luncheon sandwiches with tomato sauce and white bread. I said, that's it. And if you can bring a pile of that would be great. I said, but fruit is great. Please, it's just about a snack. This isn't feeding the masses. I have to say though, we have whānau who come and they bring their sandwiches and they bring their drink and they bring their baking, and then they sit there and they serve it to the children. And we say, it's okay if you need to go, we can do this. But that's what's important to them. They want to be with the children and share with them, and it gives them great pride. And I think above all, you need to enable people to hold on to their pride and not to stamp on it in any way. NZEI Te Reo talk about, in a range of education circles, about pillars of learning. That collaboration between teachers and students is really important. It's important to build trust and get to know families and children. It's important to be professional, not standoffish professional, not I know it all professional, but professional in your deliberations, to show them that they are valued and we care and we want to give you the best that we can. It's about meeting the needs of individual children. meeting what they need at that time. And if we have a child who arrives and are asking for something to eat before morning tea or before a lunch break, we give it to them and we sit with them and we join them. And of course that inevitably announces to about 30 other people in the room, oh, there's some kai on the table, let's all join in. Nothing wrong with that. That way you don't stand out, that way you're part of a social group. Nothing wrong with that. And we think about equity. And equity of resources, equity of access. Equity to us means having what you need. Not divvying up everything so you've got a bit to choose from. Having what you need. I'm going to move on now to if we're not doing our best, what would it look like? There are great examples, many examples of low decile schools where teachers are working with children in whānau and the wider community to make a difference. And I'm going to borrow, and I have the permission of my colleague, Linda Stewart, who's principal at May Road School in Mount Roskill, to use this. Just as an example of what can be achieved when teachers do work well and do put children in whānau and the community in their circle of influence in their children's education. May Road School is a Decile 2 school with 250 pupils. 70% are Pacifica, 20% are Māori and 10% a mix of nations. Linda Stewart, who is the principal, is also on our NZEI Te Reo National Executive. She's been at the school for 5 years, and she sees her school as the hub of the community. She feels definitely informed and connected by the 4 pillars of education that I just talked to you about. More importantly, she recognises that to understand children and get the best outcomes for them, she needs to know and understand their whānau. The school's mission statement is about valuing work, valuing self, valuing learning, and valuing all others. And this ethos is clearly understood by the whole school and community and drives much of what they do and how they behave. The school has a parent room where parents are free to come and go throughout the day. They have their own cooking facilities there. They run workshops. They have 1 day a week playgroup, and they have internet access in this room. The parents in school have also made use, as you might have noticed earlier, of the Healthy Heart Foundation Healthy Cooking Program. They have their own vegetable garden, and this is another kind of hub where parents get to know each other as they come to work in it and share the produce from it freely. And they get to know each other and they get to know about each other's children. The school started a bilingual Samoan class this year, and adjacent to that they ran sessions facilitated by teachers where parents came to a reading together course. She also took some parents to visit the school she previously taught at, and she asked someone from the university to come and talk to them about the importance of first language learning and its influence on general education. Through those small initiatives and steps, they now have parents who were previously disengaged from the school re-engaged. They had children who had issues with attendance now coming every day. And the real spin-offs, as Linda shared with me, are that there are good relationships with teachers, and that is above all the most important. Parents and other members of the community come in and they read to children every morning, and this brings the community into the school. And it pulls the school together as a family and as a whānau. The school has also taken advantage of Computers in Homes program so that they can build on that relationship and on that knowledge already given to them. They have 2 digital learning classes, and parents will be able to lease Chromebooks for their children at really affordable rates. And some of this affordability is going to be done through a process of fundraising, which means that in terms of equity, everyone can have access. The Incredible Years parenting program has been quite significant in the school, as is the Roots of Empathy program, which involves a mother and baby coming to the class and being part of the class, and with their presence, learning about care for each other, removing barriers, and thinking and putting themselves in another space and experience. And this experience stays with them over the years, so they see the baby grow and they respond, and they're quite protective and nurturing. The school also has a social worker, a dental clinic, and an early childhood centre on its site. There's once a week access to a public health nurse. However, Linda says this is insufficient, and it would make a big difference if the health nurse was more available or even based at the school. So she shared with me these statistics, that the school has had 2 cases of rheumatic fever, 2 cases of bone diseases, and numerous sores evident on children, and all directly contributable to poverty, or attributed to poverty, sorry. So really our schools carry the success stories of social policy and not the failures. If you think about, as in Linda's school, and in the story I shared with you about her school, it clearly illustrates there is an importance of playing to strengths rather than weaknesses, encouraging parents and being prepared to go on the journey with them. And while many families are struggling economically, they often have spiritual and cultural strengths that we can connect to, that we need to connect to, because that is a richness in itself. And there is the importance of both relationships, of both time and trust. The importance of connections. I talked to you about the connections between teachers, between families, and between the community and with the community. And the importance of understanding that there are many things available. We need to bring it together, bring them all together, and work out what will suit different needs. We need to redefine what constitutes success. This is especially in education, and it's much broader than the narrow standards-driven approach that schooling has been forced into. And we need to be more flexible and responsive in our educational programs. And I can tell you that the people that I work with and represent are all more than willing and are up for that. We recognise that, and in fact, I would have to say that many of them have been on that journey in spite of the policies around them. So, in a way to explain our ideas of moving forward, inclusivity, solutions and encouragement are much more constructive than placing blame and sanctions and labelling. Our goal should be to build resilience in families by working to strengths and not weaknesses. Staff in most schools and centres are already stretched to capacity in terms of pastoral care for children and families. They wouldn't have it any other way. But what I need to share on their behalf is that in order to do this well, it takes time, and it takes a little time to put more emphasis on this than perhaps on some of the curriculum subjects. In the first instance, we will get there. I know from experience we get there. We have a child arrive at the kindergarten who is almost non-verbal and who can leave with a wealth of language, some of it not always wanted by the family, but you know, we do such a good job of building social competence that, but it can happen. It just has to happen, and it will only happen if you give time to relationships. We need to turn the situation around and to turn it around will require additional resourcing, not just dollars, but people and time. And unfortunately, in the education world, time does cost. However, it's time we've spent, and we absolutely believe this is for the long haul. You're not going to fix this overnight. It's about doing a journey together and being prepared to stay on that journey. It will also require more professional development for teachers, for teacher aides and for board members. That's because we want to be at the best we can be, responsive, being well informed and having access to information that others like you in this room have, that we can share and that we can learn from. Because from my perspective, when I decided to teach, I also decided to continue to be a learner and learn from those around me. And that's I believe, the philosophy behind many of us in education. And we agree that educational success can be the ladder out of poverty, but there is such a strong correlation between socio-economic status and achievement that we cannot do it alone. Those of us in early childhood centres and in schools can't do it alone. We know that. But we can help mitigate some of the symptoms of poverty. But ultimately, we need child-centred policies that put an end to child poverty as the central goal of our society. He waka eke noa. We are all in this together. We, right now, are the crew of the waka, those of us in this room, the adults. We are responsible for the crew that will take over from us. And if we don't do that well, we'll be sitting in a waka going nowhere. We need to support others to get on board the waka in whatever way they need that support. And if that waka is representing education, then we need to give that support to our most vulnerable children to get in the waka. If any of you have ever tried to climb into a kayak, and yet it's not your natural thing to do, you'll know what I mean. Some of us need a little bit more steadying than others, but we can do it. And once we're in that waka, we need to stay in there. Not jump out at the first sign of a big wave or perhaps, a leaky boat. We can't all bail at the same time. We need to stay in there. And we need to travel together. And we need the things that will enable us to travel together for a longer journey so that we, because adults deserve to dream, but our children deserve to have their dreams and their destination. And I think that's really underpinning one of the reasons we're here. I know there are bigger pictures and there are stronger messages, but if I leave one message from you, from someone who is a teacher and who works with the most amazing people, who want to deliver the best to children and who want to lift and ease the crisis. If we could solve it, we would, but we want to be part of that with you. And we know that to do that, we need to be in the room with you all. So I thank you for the opportunity. I thank you for seeing that we can have a voice here and contribute to this bigger conversation around our children, around our taonga. They need us most at this time. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa.